Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here at the 11th Annual Bentonville Film Festival. For the viewing audience at home, please tell them the name of your piece and what you'd like them to know about it.
Yeah, the name of the film is West of Greatness, the story of the Westwego Muscle Boys. It is a docu-fiction film about two young men from the other side of the tracks in New Orleans, Louisiana, who join a bodybuilding competition hoping that the grand prize will be their ticket out.
And how did you settle on a bodybuilding film?
So for me, bodybuilding became interesting because I started noticing the kind of culture in southern Louisiana and kind of recognized a lot about it that I could relate to. You know, I'm not a bodybuilder, right? I was a, skateboarder, musician, filmmaker, artsy guy, but, I could really relate to this inherent need for something to have a little bit of control of, to kind of get out of bed in the morning. I'm personally in recovery. I've been so for over 10 years, and there's something about substance abuse disorder where part of the thing that's really tough is like this ritual you get into, right? And it's this like kind of desperate thing you're clinging on to for meaning and purpose, and also to escape what may be too much for you. And for some reason, whether it's genetics or whatever, that's who I am, right? And I've been clean and sober for over 10 years from, anything. And I just saw in these young men that do bodybuilding, a kind of similar obsession, a need for discipline, a need to kind of like hurt your body, that was driving them. And so I just kind of found it at first to be an interesting parallel, that I thought, okay, I'm going to explore these kind of universal themes of desperation, of discipline, of resilience and grit. And so bodybuilding kind of just became an interesting thing I would think about. I wouldn't even really consider making a film. I think if you told young art student Jared that his first feature film would be about bodybuilding, he'd laugh. I was watching 2001: A Space Odyssey. I have a tattoo of it on my arm, that like uber macho stuff like never appealed to me. So bodybuilding kind of just came naturally to me as this thing I got interested in later in life, just as a viewpoint of relating to young men.
And with this piece, of course, it's talking about the competition, but there's two more centralized characters. There's several characters, but there's two that there's a lot of focus toward. One of them a little more so than the other, with its own family dynamics. How did you choose to set that scenario the way it is, with all of the different layers, different parts to it, and know that you could do justice to telling that part of the story too?
So the two leads of my film are different representations of my personality. So I think it was easy for me to write and kind of pay honor to both of those characters. I was simultaneously the class clown and very silly and bubbly and very type A like Jerome is in the film, but I was also on the other side a very scared young man who was really angry at the world and felt like the burdens of family life as if it was on my shoulders. In reality, it wasn't, right? But it feels like it when you're that young. And so for Terry, he lives in a trailer park with his alcoholic father, and he has a sister who had a traumatic brain injury, whose body is whose motor functions have left, whose some of her cognitive ability is gone, and he takes on the role of caregiver. And so his dream with the money is to buy a new trailer and get the hell out of Dodge, get away from dad. That's not my experience. I love my father, but I grew up in and around a community that was very working class. We were not wealthy ourselves. We had financial struggles. But it wasn't rare for our friends and I to have the kind of life you see in West of Greatness. We both grew up in Northwest Arkansas, and well before the Bentonville Film Festival was a thing, where we're kind of seeing this art, not even a resurgence, like this growth of art and commerce here did not exist.
Acceptance.
Acceptance. So for me growing up, it was like, what do you do for fun? You my path was, steal my parents' cigarettes, drink their beer, get in trouble constantly, almost get kicked out of school all the time, skateboard in abandoned buildings, listen to music. And a lot of my, youth was also a great time, but just like that kind of like looking for something is what I come from. And so it was easy for me to pay respects to my old friends' lives who are in prison or mental institutions, or who are just working as mechanics, at the same place in the same town down the street from where they grew up. That's the world I come from. I don't come from the coast. I don't come from a world where you're a barista and you can afford a, $5,000 loft apartment like we often see in movies. And so, I just literally wrote what I know.
And you've just alluded to the two of you have known each other for some time. What is the story between the two of you being able to work together on this project?
Yeah, I'm going to give the mic to Matt.
Yeah, so Jared and I, we grew up as childhood best friends. We met when we were like 11 years old, and we were friends all through. We went through Rogers Public Schools together here in Northwest Arkansas, and we both went on to pursue the arts. And I went into music, and I went and studied guitar, and went on tour and did some things, and eventually landed on what I was really passionate about was the creative side of music. So it was film composing, and I always loved film and games and all sorts of things. And as it happens, Jared and I lost touch after high school, and just sort of happenstance, I went to an Eagles Saints game in New Orleans, and I posted on Instagram, watch whatever. And Jared saw this Instagram post and was like, "Dude, I live in New Orleans, and let's catch up." So we grabbed dinner, and come to find out, Jared was a filmmaker and was writing and producing films and shorts and advertisements and all sorts of things. So, and I was wanting to be a film composer, and it was immediately, we just picked up where we left off. We were sharing movies that we really liked and music, and it was like we were immediately right back to the way it was. So kind of full circle that we then reconnected and made this film together that's now going to be premiering in our hometown in Northwest Arkansas. It's just we're blown away by it. So,
and when you start composing, is there a particular instrument or a set of instruments that you automatically hear in your head, or is that influenced by what you know about the film?
It really does start with the story and the characters, and the setting is a huge part of this film. And so it really started there for me in terms of developing. Jared and I kind of sat together and figured out the concept of the music, which came directly from the film and the themes of the film. And so we sort of immediately had a sort of set of instruments and sounds that we thought we would go into, and we discussed influences that range from Elvis Presley to Bruce Springsteen, and we talked about rap, and there was so many different influences that we thought were related to the film and the story we were trying to tell. And so we pretty quickly developed, and I think it goes back to our background as being childhood friends. We had developed sort of a creative shorthand because we shared a lot of the same references from growing up. We grew up in the same place, and the film is set in Louisiana, but it's deeply rooted here in Northwest Arkansas, and is sort of about what it's like to grow up in a small town like we did. So we got right into it, and we definitely had a sort of sound in our minds from the beginning, but it came directly from the film and the story.
Now, the film itself, and I'm going to be as vague as I can with this, has a piece or has a point that could be considered an open ending for part of the story. How did you decide that was something you wanted in your piece?
The first draft was not that. The first draft was very dark, and I sent it for coverage and was told that it was too dark. And I remember thinking, how dare you, And then I was editing a short film for someone that was very dark, and I realized, I'm tired of this. I don't want to be in this world. And it hit me that, just because it's sad, the goal with West of Greatness is to make something very realistic, something I can relate to. And so that was my first draft. It was something I related to, but I realized that I think that's more interesting about the real world is that movies are a time capsule. They end. And, you know, if you're like me, you like to think about what the characters are going to be doing 10, 15 years later. And so I thought a really realistic thing to do would be kind of leaving it open-ended for the audience to think about. But I wanted to avoid the kind of like artistic cliche of not finishing a movie. I think I've done that in the past on my short films, and I think I used my lack of writing skills at the time and justified it as, oh, well, you know, it's open-ended and ambiguous. And so I think when you watch this film, you're not going to feel that kind of resentment at an open end. But I want you thinking about what's happening to the characters. And, you know, the film is about desperation and arching towards greatness or some kind of purpose, and asking the question of, okay, well, if you fail or if you succeed, what does that actually mean? You know, I think when you're young, you're like, if I do this, then I will be whole. I will be happy. I will be fulfilled. All the answers that scare me at night will be, or all the questions that scare me at night will be answered. And that's totally not true. And you get older and you realize that, you know? And so I wanted to make a movie that would force the audience to ask themselves, like, what do I think happened to one of these characters as a part of the experience of watching the film, you know, of like, it could really go a couple different ways like it does in real life, right? You know, how many dreams does every person have where they go, man, I remember when that was the thing, and then it didn't work out the way I wanted. Or that was the thing, and then it happened, and what I thought would happen didn't, right? I graduated college, and I got that first job, and then it just turned out to be a job. Or I failed at this thing that I thought was the most important thing I could ever do, and I'm okay, you know? And so, like, yeah, we won't spoil the ending, you know, on if our two heroes, one of them wins the bodybuilding competition, but it's like literally asking the question of like, if you win or lose, if you achieve those goals, what does it really mean?
Yeah, and then you also had nuggets of wisdom throughout that just kind of hit differently if you take it out of the context, but you apply it to life.
Yeah.
You had some really great moments in there. Some were the speeches during the competition. The one about to the point of damage, to the point of pain, to the point of hurt, that kind of has stuck with. And then there was one with the sister, and I don't remember what it was, but I remember there was another one that was like, ooh, that's really good life wisdom. So brilliant job with that.
Thank
Don't know
you.
that was intended.
So I think the fun thing about this movie is that it's a fictional film presented as a documentary, right? Our two leads are actors. Their family members in the film are actors. Everything they say is scripted. But we threw a real bodybuilding show. In the world of the film, the competitions existed since the 60s. But in reality, we threw it for the first time, but we treated it real, you know, because I needed real guys to sign up because we didn't have the budget to have 30 actors train for a year and get muscle, you know? And so we gave away real money and we attracted real local guys. And so everything that those real guys say in the film, I didn't write. So it is fiction in the fact that they wouldn't be saying those things unless I provided them this world to participate in. But that competition was real. We hired the judges and we told them, we're not in control. And we took a huge gamble on like, what if the ending sucks? And I think that we're very fortunate that the ending is pretty incredible, but I think that's because we opened ourselves up to reality and didn't force our control. And so, yeah, those guys in their speeches, you know, some of them, that's their real belief system. And so I'd love to take credit for it all, but I want to give the bigger credit to this amazing participation we got with the community of going like, hey, are you down to be in a fictional fake documentary where you play yourself, and will you trust me that I'll represent you fairly and well, and maybe give you opportunities to have a larger part in the film? And some of those guys just took total advantage of that. And it's because of them that I think that this film goes between like, this is a good movie. You know, if we made the movie I scripted, I'd be very happy. But we went above that because of our team and how collaborative it was. You know, all the crew has equity in the film. Like, that's how we structured it. Towards like everybody on board. Everybody was on board, and I just was like receptive to good ideas and kind of fostering an atmosphere of that. And those guys gave me things I could never write. And the like gratitude is ridiculous that I have, like the smile on my face when I think of them. And you know, with that competition we filmed in 2023 in November, and I just had lunch with one of them, and I still talk to these guys, you know, and these are just regular guys that work day jobs in poor southern Louisiana that got to be in a movie that they loved. You know, they went to the local friends and family premiere. And they won some prizes from our competition. Some of them are still into bodybuilding. We kind of changed their life forever. Some of them just loved the thing and are done. But like that kind of stuff is just amazing.
Good. It's nice to make that human connection, but it also showed in the film, because I kind of want to know more about some of them.
Yeah, me
like,
too.
Where are they? Like, we almost need a where are they now? What are they doing this many years later, added to like the credits?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think about that all the time too. Like some of those guys would share real stuff where I was like, that's more interesting than what I wrote. I'd love to follow up more. Should you be the lead of our movie? And we also have so much footage on the cutting room floor that like we can make a real documentary about making a fake documentary, like, you know. And so we kind of toyed with that, making like, you know, we could probably put together like a 60-minute featurette, you know, like they used to do on DVDs that I would obsessively watch as a kid to go, how'd they make that movie?
So tell me about the moment when you found out you were accepted into the Bentonville Film Festival.
So when you make a movie so I don't come from Hollywood. You know, I grew up in Arkansas, then I moved to New Orleans where there's a good scene there. But, you know, none of my friends have sold a feature film. Most of my friends haven't made one yet. We've done a bunch of the technical jobs on sets. You know, we all know how to do it. But how to do it well is another thing. But, so I'm at this point now where I'm submitting to festivals and I'm just banging my head against the wall. I'm cold calling people. I'm emailing distributors and just being like, hi, I have a thing, help, you know, because I literally, you know, none of us have sold. And so one of those strategies you always hear about is film festivals. And of course I submit to Sundance and Tribeca and these ones that I know is a long shot and I don't get in. And it stings, but I'm also like, what did I expect, you know? And so then, you know, and I submitted to Bentonville because I was like, man, there's this hometown festival that has gotten really big. And it's so cool, it's hometown. But I almost got used to hearing no. And so I get this email from Drea, who's the artistic director, saying, we love your movie and we want to offer you to have your world premiere at the Bentonville Film Festival in the homegrown section. Since you're from here, we want to spotlight a few of these films, have a little bit more of a specialized category because you guys are from here. And so I immediately, you know, called Matt and my executive producer and my DP, and I was just like, hey guys, what do y'all think, you know? And everyone was like, oh, yes, because that's also the coolest story in the world, that you make this movie with your old, like, best friend, and then you get to premiere it where, like, your old teachers can go, you know, and stuff like that. And so I'm beyond honored and so impressed with what Bentonville has done as well. You know, growing up, like I said, like there was none of this here. You know, there was one like theater you'd go to in Fayetteville, Arkansas called the Walton Arts Center where you could see like Anne of Green Gables or something like that. And so to know that there's this massive film festival here now and there's theaters here, and Gina freaking Davis, who has hugged me twice now and wears this sticker, has this sticker, is here. Like, what? As a little filmmaker boy that's still inside here, I couldn't be more jazzed in my life. I'm honored. Sorry for being so long-winded, but it's just a lot on my mind. Yeah, I'm beyond thrilled that West of Greatness is premiering at the Bentonville Film Festival. It means so much to me. I'm from the same county. You know, it's crazy.
And Matthew, what about you finding out that this was going to be here?
Yeah, so I left for a while, and I just recently moved back. I live in downtown Rogers, and so, you know, obviously I was so like overjoyed to hear that we got in because, being from here, like he said, you know, our old teachers, you know, our friends and family being able to come, and, you know, we recorded the score locally. It was really important to us to use local musicians and have them play it live. And so a lot of the musicians who played the score of the movie are going to be able to come and attend and see their music. You know, they haven't seen the movie at all. So to see, you know, this stuff, they're just looking at, you know, notes on a piece of paper. And I would kind of describe the scene to them a little bit to get the emotionality right and all these kind of things. And they're all asking me questions about, what happened, and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, just wait, you're going to see it. So for them to be able to see it all at the same time in the same place, it's just
in a 5.1 mix.
In a 5.1 mix in a theater, it's very special. I'm very, very excited. So.
Well, how can people follow the two of you, support the two of you, hire the two of you, give the two of you money? What are the socials? What are the ways to contact and follow?
You go first.
So, MathewMozzoni.com, and you can find me on Instagram and social media at Mathew Mozzoni. And I've got
Mathew Mozzoni Music or just Mathew Mozzoni?
My Instagram, very good. Yeah, my Instagram I think is at Mathew Mozzoni Music. My website is MathewMozzoni.com, and I've got jazz records on there and other scores I've done for other games and shorts and all sorts of things on there. And so yeah, that's where you can find me, and Jared can tell you about the film and all that.
So my personal Instagram is_somethinghuman. Something Human is my production company where we do commercials, short films, music videos, as well as West of Greatness. But the film Instagram is literally West of Greatness. The story, and you just type that in on Instagram. And our website is also westofgreatness.com. I'm very glad that my title wasn't something super common, so I could buy that URL for cheap. I think the best ways that you could support us is to, go on our website. We have a bunch of EPK videos we made. We made like 4 mini docs about the making of it, where we shot it, the actors, and the overall kind of concept and the premise, where that came from. I think they're really fun, compelling interviews. They're like 3 minutes long. And share our stories on Instagram. We've submitted to a bunch of other festivals, and so so much of this business is filmmaker relations, and that's why we're so happy to go to all these luncheons and panels here. And so here's my biggest plug. If you're a distributor and you're interested in acquiring a pretty cool film, give me a call. Send me a DM.
I thank you both for being here. I wish you all the best, and may your opening be everything you've wished for and more.
Thanks so much.